morning, everyone. Today, I, Jagjeet kaur of B.design first year of Code VGU, is going to talk on the topic Cubism from Evolution of Art and Design module. After listening to this topic, first question that arises in our mind is what is Cubism? Well, Cubism is an early 20th century avant-garde art movement that revolutionized European painting and sculpture and inspired related movements in music, literature, and architecture. In Cubist artwork, objects are analyzed, broken up, and reassembled in an abstracted form. Instead of depicting objects from a single viewpoint, the artist depicts the subject from a multitude of viewpoints to represent the subject in a greater context. The term is broadly used in association with a wide variety of art produced in Paris or near Paris during the 1910s and throughout the 1920s. There are three phases in Cubism: early Cubism, high Cubism, and late Cubism. Early Cubism lasted from 1906 to 1908, when the movement was initially developed in the studios of Picasso and Baroque. High Cubism lasted from 1909 to 1914, during which time Joan Gris emerged as an important exponent. Late Cubism from 1914 to 1921 as the late phase of Cubism as a radical avant-garde movement. There are mainly two types of Cubism. First is analytical Cubism and second is synthetic Cubism. Analytical Cubism. The first stage of the Cubism movement was called Analytical Cubism. In this style, artists would study or analyze the subject and break it up into different blocks. They would look at the blocks from different angles. Then they would reconstruct the subject, painting the blocks from various viewpoints. Synthetic Cubism. The second stage of Cubism introduced the idea of adding in other materials in a collage. Artists would use colored paper, newspaper, and other materials to represent the different blocks of the subject. This stage also introduced brighter color and a lighter mood to the art. Influence of Cubist movement. Though Cubism never regained its place as an organized force in the art world, its vast influence has continued in movements like Futurism, Constructivism, Abstract Expression, and others. Cubism influenced other forms as well. In literature, James Joyce, Virginia Woolf, Gertrude Steins, and William Faulkner in music. Ignore Stravinsky in photography, Paul Strand, Alexander Rodchiko, and Laszlo Moholy-Nagy in film, Hans Richter and Friedrich Lang, as well as graphic design and scenic design. Some examples of Cubist paintings are following: Violin and Candlestick, Georges Perec. This is early example of analytical cubism. In the painting you can see the broken up pieces of the violin and the candlestick. Many different angles and blocks of the objects are represented to the viewer. Perec said that this style allowed the viewers to get closer to the object. Three musicians, Pablo Picasso. This movement by Pablo Picasso was only of his later work in Cubism and is an example of synthetic Cubism. Although it looks like the picture is made out of cut up pieces of colored paper, it is actually a painting. In the painting, it is difficult to tell where one musician ends and the next begins. This could represent the harmony of the music as the musicians play together. Portrait of Picasso, Joan Gris. Cubism was also used to paint portraits. In this example of analytical Cubism, Joan Gris pays tribute to the inventor of Cubism, Pablo Picasso. Like many early Cubism painting, the painting uses cool blues and light browns of colors. The lines between the different blocks are well defined. Well, Picasso's facial expression can still be reorganized. Just as in painting, Cubist sculpture is rooted in Paul Cézanne's reduction of painted objects into component planes and geometric solids. And just as in painting, it became a pervasive influence and contributed fundamentally to constructivism and futurism. Cubist sculptures developed in parallel to Cubist painting. During the autumn of 1909, Picasso sculpted head of a woman, Fernandez, with positive features depicted by negative space and vice versa. According to Douglas Cooper, the first true Cubist sculpture was Picasso's impressive woman's head, modeled in 1909 to 1910, a counterpart in three dimensions to many similar analytical and faceted heads in his painting at the time. Architectural interest in Cubism centered on the delusion and reconstructivism of three-dimensional form using simple geometrical shapes without the illusions of classical perspective. Diverse elements could be superimposed, made transparent, or penetrate one another while retaining their spectacle relationships. Cubism had become an influence factor in the development of modern architecture from 1912 onwards, developing in parallel with architects such as Peter Berhans and Walter Gropius. With the simplification of building design, the use of material appropriate to industrial production, and the increased use of glass. With Cubism in art growing in popularity, its influence on fashion rapidly progressed in the 1920s with the introduction of geometric prints and muted colors, reflecting the images of Cubist paintings 40 years on. In the 1960s. Designers such as Mary Quant, who is best known for her hot pants and miniskirts, was heavily influenced by the cuts and shapes of Cubist paintings, and especially favored the work of Picasso when engineering her designs. Designers such as Greta Pog are also known for their experimentation with Cubism in fashion, with his 2008 Autumn-Winter collection full of geometric and abstract shapes and patterns, or the greatest Victor and Rolf S in their Autumn-Winter 2011-12 collection. That's all for today. Thank you and have a nice day.